Welcome back to Throttle Tribe. The 1970s were loud, rebellious, and full of wild machines. Some bikes became legends, others crashed and burned, literally and figuratively. Not every 70s motorcycle is a collector's gem. Today, we're diving into the 7 worst and 6 best rides of the decade, separating the beasts from the busts. Let's hit it. Number 7. Honda CB500F, 1975. The 1975 Honda CB500F was supposed to be a step forward. It ended up stuck in place. Honda took their aging CB450 and tried to modernize it. But what came out felt more like a throwback than an upgrade. It looked the part. But the ride told a different story. At the center was a 4-stroke parallel twin-cylinder engine with a displacement of 498 centimeters on paper that sounded like progress on the road. It was more of the same. The extra displacement didn't give the bike more punch, it gave it more vibration. And that was the problem. The CB500F shook like it had something to say but didn't know how to say it. Riders felt the buzz through the bars, the pegs, the mirrors everywhere. It made long rides a chore, and short rides something to brace for. Even the gauges would blur at cruising speed for a bike meant to evolve a classic. It just made riders miss the old one. It produced about 34 horsepower at 8,500 revolutions per minute, which wouldn't have been terrible if the bike didn't weigh 425 pounds dry. That weight worked against it at every turn. Acceleration was sluggish. Throttle response felt muted. It moved, but not with any real urgency. Torque was just as uninspiring, with only 22 pounds per foot, coming in at 7,000 revolutions per minute. That meant revving it hard just to get any real movement. And when you did, the vibration reminded you why that was a bad idea. Top speed hovered around 101 miles per hour, but few riders ever chased it. The high-speed wobble and constant buzz made backing off the smarter choice. Even the handling wasn't enough to save it. The suspension was soft and the frame felt unsettled. Under load, fuel economy landed near 40 mpg, which didn't earn many points either. Plenty of bikes in the same class could do better and feel better doing it. The CB500F looked like a classic on the outside, but underneath it was a shaky reminder that not all updates are upgrades. Before we dive into that, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more unbeatable motorcycle deals. Number 6. Ducati 860 GT, 1974. Some bikes age into classics, others just age. The 1975 Ducati 860 GT falls squarely into the second group. It was Ducati's big swing at modernization, but instead of turning heads for the right reasons, it left many riders wondering what went wrong. Sitting at its core was an air-cooled 90 degrees V twin engine with a displacement of 864 centimeters on paper that sounded like serious muscle, but in real-world riding, the GT never lived up to the numbers. The styling was a shock to the system. Designed by Giorgio Giugiaro, best known for his work on exotic cars, the GT broke away from Ducati's classic curves in favor of flat panels and squared edges. The tank looked boxy. It was meant to look futuristic, but the result felt awkward and unfinished, a motorcycle that looked uncomfortable even when parked. It made around 65 horsepower at 7,000 revolutions per minute. That would have been decent if the bike had felt alive on the throttle. Instead, it hesitated. The delivery was inconsistent. Acceleration was flat. Twist the grip and wait because nothing happened quickly. Torque landed at about 56 pounds per foot, which should have helped the bike pull from lower revs, but the gearing and engine character worked against it. Clutch feel didn't help either. Engagement was abrupt and the lever was stiff. Riders found themselves wrestling it more than operating it. Vibration crept in through the bars. The mirrors shook. The ride felt more like a chore than a thrill. Top speed came in at around 110 miles per hour, but getting there meant dealing with a stiff suspension and vague handling. The Ducati 860 GT was a bold design that didn't match its ride. Number 5. LTDA 10003C, 1973. It looked serious even when parked. The 1973 LTDA 10003C was built to fight the Japanese superbike invasion, but its bark was louder than its bite. LTDA had big plans with this triple-cylinder beast. What riders got was a motorcycle that felt like it was working against itself. The centerpiece was a transverse-mounted 4-stroke engine with a displacement of 980 centimeters. That setup gave the bike a presence, but it also gave it weight at over 470 pounds dry. It was not lightweight. Riders noticed it at every stop, every turn, every time they tried to push it hard. Horsepower came in at 78 horsepower at 7,250 revolutions per minute on a spec sheet that made the LTDA a contender on the road that power didn't always translate. The throttle felt disconnected at lower speeds, twisted hard, and the bike responded eventually. The delay didn't inspire confidence. Torque reached about 63 pounds per foot at 5,000 revolutions per minute, but instead of pulling strong and steady, the delivery felt uneven. Top speed touched 123 miles per hour, but staying there took real effort. The engine buzzed, the handlebars shook, and the suspension gave you every bump twice comfort. Not on the menu, it rode more like a machine testing its rider than the other way around. The Lava 10003C looked fast, sounded aggressive, and promised performance, but what it really delivered was frustration wrapped in Italian chrome. If you think this bike is impressive, just wait until you see what's coming up next. Number 4. Triumph Trident. T160 1975 by the mid-70s. Triumph was trying to stay alive. The 1975 Triumph Trident T160 was their attempt at catching up. But instead of leading the charge, it felt like it was limping behind the competition was faster, lighter, and more refined. Triumph responded with a motorcycle that still had one foot in the past. Under the tank was a 741 centimeters air-cooled inline triple engine on paper. It looked competitive in practice. The ride didn't match the promise. The T160 had a classic growl, but its manners were anything but smooth. It felt heavy at idle and even heavier in traffic. Horsepower peaked at 58 horsepower at 7,250 revolutions per minute. That number could have worked, but the delivery was slow and dull. The power band was narrow below it. The bike felt sluggish above it. The ride turned harsh, and with a weight of over 503 pounds, the engine had too much to carry. One of its headline features was the electric starter, new for Triumph triples. But new didn't mean better riders quickly learned to keep their boots ready because the starter was known to fail. Sometimes it would crank, other times it clicked and died. The backup kickstarter wasn't just an option, it became. The rule torque came in at around 44 pounds per foot, but most of it lived up high. That made city riding clumsy and highway passing inconsistent. The 5-speed gearbox didn't help much either. Shifts felt stiff and neutral was notoriously hard to find when the engine warmed up. Clutch pull was firm and tiring after a long ride. Your hand knew it. Oil leaks were common, especially near the rocker cover, and vibration crept in through the bars once the revs climbed. Instrument needles bounced at idle. Electrical problems came and went. Even adjusting the chain felt like a chore. The bike asked for attention often, but gave back very little joy in return. Top speed sat near 112 miles per hour, but confidence at that pace was in short supply. Handling felt numb and the frame flexed under pressure. Long corners were manageable, but tight ones exposed the bike's size and outdated geometry. Fuel economy averaged around 38 mpg gallon fare, but not enough to make up for the quirks. The seat was stiff. The peg sat awkwardly, and the ride never quite felt in sync. The Trident T160 wasn't awful, but it wasn't enough. It tried to blend tradition with progress and ended up pleasing neither side. Number 3. Suzuki. Re5, 1974. Not every revolution turns the wheel forward. The 1975 Suzuki RE5 was supposed to be a game-changer. Instead, it became a museum piece. Suzuki wanted to lead the future with rotary power. What they delivered was a heavy, hot, and confusing machine that few riders ever learned to love. The RE5 came with a single rotor Wankel engine rated at 497 centimeters. It was quiet, smooth, and packed into a tidy frame, but that smoothness came at a cost. Riders missed the rumble, the punch, and the feedback that made traditional bikes feel alive. It all felt a bit too distant. Power peaked at 62 horsepower at 6,500 revolutions per minute. For a rotary, that was solid. For riders used to strong mid-range pull and instant throttle, it was a letdown. The bike responded more like a turbine than a street machine, gradual, calm, and disconnected from urgency. Torque reached 55 pounds per foot at 3,500 revolutions per minute, but even with those figures, the RE5 never felt eager. It pulled steadily, never sharply. The real problem came when riders let off the gas. With almost no engine braking, slowing down took planning and faith in the brakes. Wet weight came in at 573 pounds, making it one of the heavier bikes in its class, and it rode like it. Low-speed handling was clumsy. Parking was awkward. In corners, it preferred wide arcs over tight flicks. Add in the unusual dash layout and chunky controls, and the bike felt more like an experiment than a finished product. Top speed hovered near 110 miles per hour, but most riders were too focused on the heat. The engine ran hot in traffic. Even with water cooling, overheating wasn't rare. Long rides became tense, not fun. Fuel mileage averaged in the low 30s, about 32 mpg. For a bike trying to sell innovation, that number stung. The RE5 asked a lot of its riders and gave back novelty instead of joy. It looked different, it sounded different, but it rode like something better left on paper. Loving this bike? Hold on tight, the next one will blow you away. Number 2, Suzuki TM400 Cyclone. 1971, you didn't ride the Suzuki TM400 Cyclone, you survived it. In the early 1970s, Suzuki unleashed this motocross beast with the promise of raw power. What they delivered was chaos on 2 wheels. This was the kind of bike that separated brave riders from broken bones. The engine was a 2-stroke single-cylinder setup with a displacement of 396 centimeters. It sounded angry and acted worse. Power came on suddenly, violently, and without warning. This wasn't a curve, it was a spike. The throttle felt like a switch, off, or hanging on for dear life. Rated at around 40 horsepower at 6,500 revolutions per minute, the numbers looked competitive, but in the dirt, they told the wrong story. There was no finesse, no gradual buildup. One twist and the rear tire dug in, spun loose, or sent the rider flying. Torque clocked in near 32 pounds per foot, but it wasn't the figure that mattered, it was the delivery. Everything hit at once. New riders called it unpredictable, experienced ones called it dangerous. The engine didn't build power, it dumped it, and with no warning, you had milliseconds to react. Weight came in at around 230 pounds, which should have helped the handling, but the suspension was stiff and unforgiving. Every bump became a launch pad, the rear shocks faded fast, the front forks dove under braking. Corners turned into commitments, landings were pure guesswork. The power band wasn't just narrow, it was explosive. Most bikes let you roll on the throttle and find your pace. This one punished hesitation. Riders learned to hang back or hang on. Mid-corner throttle correction, forget it. You either nailed it or you bit the dirt. It became infamous not for victories but for hospital visits. Mechanics hated tuning it, riders feared racing it. Top speed was just under 80 miles per hour, which was more than enough. Most never needed to find out. The real challenge was staying upright before they got close. Power delivery, suspension, and handling all worked against each other like mismatched parts of a bad plan. Fuel mileage? Not something people talked about. The 2-stroke motor drank gas quickly, and even quicker when pushed hard. Riders spent more time refueling than racing, or recovering from crashes. The TM400 Cyclone didn't just have a reputation, it had a warning label. Suzuki built it to win races, but it mostly won fear. It promised power and gave panic. Not a bike you rode to victory, a bike you rode and hoped you'd walk away from. Number 1, Kawasaki H2 Mach 44, 1972. Some bikes are built to go fast. The Kawasaki H2 Mach V was built to scare you doing it. In 1972, Kawasaki dropped this machine on the world like a lightning bolt, and just like lightning, it was loud, sudden, and dangerous if you weren't grounded. Underneath its fiberglass bodywork sat a 2-stroke air-cooled inline triple engine with a displacement of 748 centimeters. It sounded like a swarm of hornets and pulled like a freight train once you cracked the throttle open. Riders expecting a smooth curve were met with a power band that exploded without warning. The H2 was rated at 74 horsepower at 6,800 revolutions per minute. That figure made it one of the most powerful bikes in its class. But the way that power hit was the problem. It didn't build, it detonated. 1 second you were cruising, the next your front wheel was floating off the ground. Torque came in at around 57 pounds per foot, delivered mid-rev, but with the bike's light frame and sketchy suspension, it felt more like a challenge than a feature. Riders learned to feather the clutch, ease the throttle, and hope they picked the right gear. The bike didn't reward aggression, it punished it. Dry weight was listed at 424 pounds. That helped it launch fast, but not straight. The chassis was known to flex, the front end would wobble under load. Stability at speed felt more like a rumor than a feature. It moved fast, but not always where you wanted it to go. Top speed was near 120 miles per hour, and it got there in a hurry. But staying there was another story. One disc up front tried to handle all the stopping, and it didn't always succeed. Riders gave it space both on the road and in their garage. Fuel mileage was poor, landing around 25 mpg. Between the gas stops and the white-knuckle rides, few used it for much beyond adrenaline fixes. The H2 Mach 4 was not about refinement. It was about raw, unfiltered speed and the chaos that came with it. 6 best motorcycles of the 1970s. But not every motorcycle from the 70s was a disaster. Some raised the bar and never looked back. So, now that we've handled the breakdowns, let's take a look at the breakthroughs. If this bike caught your eye, you won't believe what's next on the list. Number 6, Suzuki GS 750, 1977. In 1977, the Suzuki GS 750 stepped onto the scene and showed everyone that performance didn't need drama. While other bikes chased attention, this one built its reputation ride by ride. The engine was a 4-stroke air-cooled inline-4 with a displacement of 748 centimeters. It was Suzuki's first major 4-cylinder 4-stroke, and they got it right the first time. Smooth, durable, and eager to rev, it gave riders a new level of control without any of the quirks that plagued earlier rivals. Rated at 68 horsepower at 8,500 revolutions per minute, the GS delivered strong acceleration without feeling jumpy. The power band was wide, the throttle response was clean. Torque came in at around 43 pounds per foot at 8,250 revolutions per minute. It wasn't brute force, but it was consistent. That made city riding easy and highway cruising effortless. The 5-speed gearbox helped with slick shifts and smart ratios. Dry weight measured about 512 pounds, which was average for its class, but the bike carried it well. The double cradle frame gave it balance, and the suspension setup, telescopic forks in front, twin shocks in back, kept the ride comfortable without feeling vague. The brakes, discs front and rear, brought it down from speed with no fuss. The GS also had a reputation for being nearly bulletproof. Owners praised it for going thousands of miles with barely a hiccup. Valve adjustments were easy, carb tuning wasn't a nightmare. When something did go wrong, parts were simple to find and cheap to replace. It was a mechanic's friend and a beginner's dream. Riders could learn on it, grow with it, and never feel outmatched. Top speed landed around 123 miles per hour. That made it quick enough to hang with the top-tier machines, but it never felt twitchy doing it. The bike stayed planted, steady, and responsive. Fuel economy hovered near 37 mpg, which meant fewer stops and longer rides. With a generous tank, that translated into solid range and real-world practicality. The GS 750 didn't chase flash, it focused on getting every detail right, and it did. A bike that showed up ready to perform and kept performing long after others fell short. Was your favorite bike on the list or your worst nightmare? Tell us below. Drop a like if you love the ride. Hit subscribe for more motorcycle rankings. Number 5. Yamaha RD 350 1975. You didn't need a big engine to go fast. The Yamaha RD 350 proved that in 1973. Small, sharp, and shockingly quick, this bike made a name for itself not by overpowering the road, but by outsmarting it. Under the tank was a 2-stroke air-cooled parallel twin with a displacement of 347 cubic centimeters. It was simple in design, but deadly effective. The engine spun up fast and pulled hard without asking for much in return. For riders used to sluggish 4 strokes, this was a jolt to the system. Horsepower came in at 39 horsepower at 7,500 revolutions per minute. But it wasn't just the number that mattered, it was the way the bike delivered it. The throttle was crisp, the response was immediate. Twisted and the RD came alive with energy that felt a class above its weight. Torque reached 24 pounds per foot at 7,000 revolutions per minute. That gave it just enough low-end punch to keep it responsive in traffic, but it was the mid-range where this bike thrived. Stay in the sweet spot, and it rewarded you with a smooth, predictable pull all the way to red line. Wet weight was around 342 pounds, which gave the RD its signature handling. You could flick it through corners with confidence. The double cradle frame held steady, and the suspension setup, telescopic forks in the front, twin shocks in the back, absorbed rough roads without drama. Top speed was clocked at 102 miles per hour, which might not sound earth-shattering today, but in the 70s it was enough to humiliate bigger bikes. The front disc brake gave it modern stopping power, and the rear drum added just enough backup to keep things balanced. Fuel mileage was reported around 40 mpg, making it practical enough to ride every day, and with oil injection there was no need for messy premixing, just gas and go. The Yamaha RD 350 didn't try to be everything. It focused on what mattered: lightweight, quick response, and real fun. And that was more than enough. If you're into this bike, just wait. The next one's even more exciting. Number 4. BMW R90S 1973. This wasn't the bike BMW was expected to build. It was the one that changed everything when the R90S launched in 1973. It didn't just show up to compete, it came to redefine what a sport touring motorcycle could be. The engine was a 4-stroke air-cooled boxer twin with a displacement of 898 centimeters. That flat twin layout wasn't new for BMW, but what they did with it on this bike was the power delivery felt balanced and refined, giving the R90S a ride that was both calm and quick. Horsepower peaked at 67 horsepower at 7,000 revolutions per minute, but it wasn't just about speed. The R90S felt composed. You could push it hard, and it wouldn't push back. It rolled on power smoothly, and always seemed to know what came next. Torque was rated at 56 pounds per foot, at 5,500 revolutions per minute, and it came on early. That made highway passes effortless and gave it pull in every gear. No need to wring it out. It had strength where it mattered. Weight came in at about 474 pounds wet. That number might suggest bulk, but the low center of gravity made it feel lighter than it was handling. Confident corners came easy, and with the fairing cutting, the longer rides felt relaxed. The cockpit was clean and purposeful with a pair of analog clocks and minimal distractions. The factory paint scheme silver with black pinstripes gave the bike a custom feel, right out of the crate. Fit and finish were top-notch. Riders often praised how everything felt tight, precise, and thought through. Even the seat offered a balance of sport and comfort. It wasn't flashy, but it didn't need to be. BMW gave riders function, then quietly made it beautiful on back roads. It handled like a lightweight on highways. It felt like it could cruise forever. Top speed reached 124 miles per hour, putting it right in line with the quickest bikes of its day. But it wasn't just fast, it was steady. No wobbles, no drama, just a straight shot of German engineering doing exactly what it was built to do. Brakes included dual discs up front and a single drum in the rear. Simple but strong enough to bring the bike down from speed without hesitation. The suspension setup used telescopic forks and dual shocks that soaked up imperfections without turning spongy. Fuel economy hovered near 47 mpg, which meant you could ride hard and still go far. The R90S didn't need to shout to stand out, it just did everything right, and it did it first. Number 3. Kawasaki Z1, 1972. When the Kawasaki Z1900 rolled out in 1972, it didn't follow trends. It created them at a time when most bikes played it safe. This one came out swinging with more power, more presence, and a sound that could rattle windows. Its engine was a 4-stroke inline-4, with a displacement of 93 centimeters. Riders knew immediately this wasn't just about speed, it was about a new kind of confidence. Horsepower came in at 82 horsepower at 8,500 revolutions per minute. The response was clean, the acceleration was relentless. It didn't matter if you were rolling through town or opening it up on the highway, it pulled with purpose. Torque peaked at 54 pounds per foot at 7,000 revolutions per minute, which made for strong mid-range. Grunt riders could hold a gear longer pass without planning, and cruise without effort. It gave the Z1 a sense of muscle that few bikes could match. At the time it tipped the scales at 542 pounds wet, but the weight never felt like a burden. The steel double cradle frame helped it stay stable at speed, and the long wheelbase made sure it tracked straight and true even under hard throttle. The chassis held firm. Top speed touched 132 miles per hour, and it got there with surprising ease. A single disc up front and a drum in the rear handled braking duties. Not perfect, but solid enough for the era. Most riders were too busy holding on to complaint. Fuel economy was around 35 mpg, which wasn't spectacular, but fair for a bike this size. With its large tank, it could still cover ground without constant stops, making it as practical as it was powerful. The Z1 wasn't about flash, it was about making big promises and actually keeping them. It gave riders speed, strength, and reliability in one unforgettable package, and made the rest of the industry take notes. If you think this bike is impressive, just wait until you see what's coming up next. Number 2. Honda Goldwing GL 1000. 1974, most bikes were built to move. The Honda Goldwing GL 1000 was built to travel when it arrived in 1975. It didn't just offer performance, it offered peace, smooth, silent, and unlike anything else on the road, the Goldwing changed the definition of what a motorcycle could be. At the center of the bike was a flat, 4-cylinder, liquid-cooled engine with a displacement of 999 centimeters. It sat low in the frame and stayed cool even in traffic. The layout gave the bike its balance, the silence gave it its mystique. Riders didn't just hear the difference, they felt it. Horsepower came in at 78 horsepower at 7,000 revolutions per minute. It didn't launch like a sport bike, but it rolled forward with steady strength. Throttle response was gentle, not lazy twist and go, no lurching, no drama, just momentum torque, peaked at 61 pounds per foot at 5,500 revolutions per minute that gave it pull through every gear. No downshifting required to pass, it cruised effortlessly, even two up. Even fully loaded, you didn't ride this bike aggressively, you rode it long dry. Weight was 584 pounds, but you wouldn't guess it. The underseat fuel tank and low engine layout kept the center of gravity close to the ground. Parking was easy, tight, turns were calm, you never felt like you were wrestling it. Just guiding it top speed hovered around 111 miles per hour. Not that many owners cared, the real reward was the calm between 50 and 70. It stayed composed, it stayed quiet, and it didn't shake even after hours in the saddle. Suspension used conventional telescopic forks up front and twin shocks in the back. The setup soaked up highway bumps and kept the ride level. Braking came from dual discs up front, and a single disc in the rear. Reliable balance, no surprises. Fuel economy averaged 35 mpg gallon, and with a 5-gallon tank that gave riders decent range between stops, just enough to stretch out without worrying about where the next station was. The Goldwing didn't try to be everything, it just did everything right, and for the long-haul rider that was all that mattered. Loving this bike? Hold on tight, the next one will blow you away. Number 1. Honda CBX 10000. 1978. The Honda CBX 1000 landed in 1978 with 6 cylinders, one wild soundtrack, and enough presence to steal attention from anything around it. The engine was a transverse inline 6-cylinder with a displacement of 1,047 centimeters. Just seeing that wide motor spilling out of the frame was enough to make jaws drop. It wasn't built for subtlety, it was built to make a point and then pass everything in front of it. Horsepower peaked at 105 horsepower at 9,000 revolutions per minute. Rev it up and it wailed like a Formula One car. The throttle was crisp, the pull was instant. The CBX didn't just accelerate, it attacked the road in front of it. Torque came in at 53 pounds per foot at 6,500 revolutions per minute, which gave the bike real flexibility in the mid-range. Whether you were in third gear or fifth, it moved with the same eager surge. There was no waiting, no lag, just twist and move. Wet weight was 599 pounds, but the handling never felt clumsy. That low engine layout helped. So did the balanced chassis. Even though it was long and wide, the CBX stayed composed. Sweepers, straights, and hard braking zones. It handled them all with confidence. Top speed hit 136 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest production motorcycles of its time, and it felt stable, doing it no front-end wobble, no frame flex, just that big engine pushing through the wind like a turbine on wheels. Suspension used air-assisted forks up front and twin shocks in the back. They did the job, soaking up highway bumps and keeping the bike planted under load. The braking setup, twin discs up front and a single disc in the rear, was strong enough to bring all that weight down quickly without fuss. Fuel economy sat around 39 mpg gallon, a respectable number for a bike this powerful. With a 5.3 gal tank, it could stretch out comfortably between fill-ups. The CBX 1000 didn't aim for practicality, it aimed for glory and hit it a 6-cylinder statement that still echoes through time. 13 bikes, some iconic, some infamous, but every single one helped define a decade that didn't hold back. If one of these machines hit your garage or your nerves, tell us below. Did we miss a bike that you think should have made the list? Drop it in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more awesome motorcycle content, and as always, ride safe. See you in the next one.